back to another episode of Real Estate Investing Unscripted. I'm your co-host, Brendan Bennett, and with me is your other co-host, David Dugan. David, what's up?
Brendan, we are doing well today. This is actually podcast number 2 today, so cat's out of the bag. Recording 2 in a day. We're warmed up. We're ready to go. We just got done with Doug Dvorak. Doug's awesome. He runs the capital market side of our business, so gave us some really good insight on kind of how the back end of the business works with us and how our capital flows. So that was a fun one. But today, I guess number 2 today, we have another guest who we're excited to have on here. A little bit of a different perspective than Doug, certainly. So, we'll get into that.
Yeah, I think episode with Doug was awesome to kind of learn about the investor side. I think where we're going to be able to take this episode a little bit more is on the mind of a real estate developer and kind of how that works with on that flip, but also the other avenues that this person takes from a business perspective. So, Dugan, let's get into the intro and get him on here.
Yeah, so today we have Dawson Gant. He is a 23-year-old real estate investor and business entrepreneur. Now, we asked Dawson for a little bio, and so he gave us this kind of awesome resume that's 3 or 4 sentences long. So instead of me trying to slog through that, I'll give us the Cliff Notes version. Basically, Dawson began his real estate career at 18 as an agent, saw an opportunity in the market at that point, and transitioned from being an agent to a real estate investment entrepreneur. And so he built a company, an 8-figure real estate company in less than 3 years. Now he flips 8 to 10 homes monthly. He does a handful of ground-up developments as well. He does some e-commerce operations, and he is scaling his businesses both on the building side as well as the renovation side. So hopefully I didn't butcher that too much, Dawson, but glad to have you on, man, and introduce yourself and fill in the gaps where I might have missed them.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys, for having me on. Like David said, my name is Dawson Gant, 23, soon to be 24. I've been extremely blessed and super grateful for the journey I've been on the last 5 years, and have to credit a lot of that success to having great lending partners and people that understand the business just as much as I do. So when I got this opportunity to come talk with my main guys, my lenders, fund that flip, took it and happy to be here and share some knowledge and help in any way that I can.
Hell yeah, man. I think just kind of off the rip. So you got started when you were 18. Your wedge kind of into this space was in wholesaling. Was that the goal from the start? Were you like, hey, I'm going to become a wholesaler. I'm going to make, $100,000 a year and I'll be good with that. And it kind of blew up, or like, did you know that was going to be your wedge into this space and you just ran it down?
Yeah, and I mean, so for me, I actually started as an agent and didn't really know much about wholesaling, but realized that the majority of my clients that I actually like to deal with were the investor clients, right? They knew what they wanted to buy. It wasn't an emotional buy, and we could do a lot of volume together. And the biggest qualm that my investor clients had early on was they couldn't find good deals. So I quickly found out what wholesaling was. I was like, oh, I can make way more on a $50,000 house than 3% if I give it to them off market. And I started doing that paired with the agency to keep the bills paid. And truthfully, I just didn't like working with people that needed to see 40 houses before pulling the trigger. And I dived into the wholesale after a client, we saw 30 houses, and she said that the feng shui in the last house made her think she didn't need to buy a house right now. And, I was a struggling college kid with no gas money, driving around trying to show this woman a house. So I kind of threw the towel in there and went full scale into the wholesale. And, I've seen some great success from that, and then transitioned to where all the investors are making money by being owner operators and actually, doing the flips and the new construction and stuff like that.
Sure. Just really quick before we move on to the next topic. So for the listeners, can you just give a quick breakdown of what wholesaling is?
Yeah. So, I mean, typically what you're doing is you're acting as the middleman. You're doing marketing to sellers, owners of properties that are in distressed situations, right? Tax issues, inheritance, all those types of things, absentee owners, and you're making them a low enough offer to where you can make a little bit of money by assigning those contractual rights over to a flipper like myself or anyone that you probably had on, right? So it's pretty much being the middleman, doing some marketing and understanding the sales and marketing process in order to have a little bit of equity in that deal and make some money.
Got it. So wholesaling kind of helped you build that foundation. You started to meet other investors in the space. I mean, the guys that you were probably selling these wholesale deals to are legitimate operators. You're like, wow, like instead of selling these guys the properties, maybe I can, keep some of that profit in my pocket. Is that kind of the transition that took place?
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened, similar to the agency situation, as I was selling to a couple of guys that, would pay me $20,000, $30,000 a lick, which is phenomenal money, with no risk or real credit needed or anything like that, right? I wasn't having to buy the property, but then I would turn around and see that same property marketed for $200,000-$300,000 more than what I sold them for, and I'd ask them, I'd be like, well, what do you have in this property? And they're like, oh, $75,000. So I'm like, wow, they made $150,000 in 3 months. Why am I not doing this? I have the cash. And partially, just being young, didn't really understand that I was capable of doing that. And then I had one guy that was, a big operator up in Raleigh, and he was like, dude, you need to keep this deal, right? He was like, I want to buy it from you, but keep it, flip it. And he kind of walked me through that. And then we were off to the races. And, nowadays we don't really keep anything to wholesale. Most of it's flipping or buying holds or right back on the market.
So, Dawson, I want to jump in there because I think you are you kind of breeze through what a lot of people I think struggle with, right? Which is taking that next step and kind of building the processes and the network in place. So going from wholesaling, you learn the acquisition side, you figured out acquisitions, right? You dipped your toe in the real estate space there and kind of learned what you were doing, but then growing the processes, right? Getting the contractors, right? The lenders, the title companies, all those other pieces that go into rehabbing and dispositioning a property. Can you touch on that and what that process was like and then some of the steps you had to take?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so for me, we were already dispositioning to investors and putting stuff on the market before actually contracting the property. So for disposition was pretty simple for me. And, obviously anyone that tells you that they got into real estate and had a struggle the last 2.5 years is probably lying. We were in a perfect market. You could buy a house for $100,000 and list it for $150,000, and 9 times out of 10 you'd sell it. So blessed to, kind of started my journey right before that, and then started flipping heavily right during that. Right, can definitely make you a little spoiled. But the biggest thing for me was when we were doing renovations. I had to learn a lot. Lose some money with some contractors and fumble a few times. But again, I was in a great market to where I could fumble and overspend my $20,000 on a project and get that out of the project. Not necessarily the case now, but what that forced me to do is bring everything in-house. So I'm also a licensed GC, or my GC company is licensed through me. And we do everything in-house because I like to have control on everything. So running the wholesale company, I realized that I had control of almost everything during the deal. And now we have that control in the rehabs, and that same operator that kind of forced me to do my first flip told me, hey, like, you need to set a standard right now. And he's a one-man show and does several $1 million a month in real estate. And his flips are the exact same, right? And it doesn't matter if the market is upside down, sideways, or going up. His quality of flip, even if he could be cheap on a couple of deals, it's the same throughout. And he instilled that into me. So, my rehabs are very high quality. I probably overspend on deals I don't have to, but it makes up because my house is selling 3-4 days on the market, even in this market. So I learned that stuff and really can accredit a lot of my early success to two things: is A, being in the right room with the right people, and B, taking action when action was necessary, right? So I'm not a guy that is going to sit around and ponder, oh, should I buy a flip? Is it raining outside today? Should I maybe wait off till next month and buy that next deal? I'm willing to kind of bet because I'm so young, and I tell everybody I can go bankrupt 3 times and still be ahead of most people in the world. So I'll take that risk, and that's what I can accredit a lot of my success to, is kind of just going 2 feet in really, really early.
Yeah, Dawson, I'm curious there, right? So like, a lot of us have read the self-help books that talk about mindset, talk about resiliency, kind of what you said, right? Like not letting a stormy day or a stormy situation make you shy away from an opportunity, and you're like, hey, I'm young, I can take the risk. Where does that come from, and like how do you keep that front of mind, right? So the markets have changed a lot in the last 6 months. It'd be easy for someone who was fan of heart to kind of get skittish and kind of start to take their chips off the table. You changed strategy, to my knowledge, but you haven't by any means stepped away from the space. I mean, you're seeing opportunity, right? There's blood in the water. Talk about that a little bit, because I think mindset kind of leads a lot of this. Where does that come from for you?
Yeah, I mean, so I definitely was. I don't have the typical guru story where I was homeless and then started making a bunch of money. I came from a single parent household that we did okay, right? We were in a 600 square foot house, and I didn't have to worry about when I was going to eat next. I had clothes on my back, but I never had more than that. And so knowing that, I'm able to do the things I'm able to do today, drive the cars and live the lifestyle I'm able to do right now, and I came from that, I know I can go back to that. And, it took me 5 years this time. It'll take me 2.5 next time. And after that, it'll take me a year to get back to where I'm at today.
Sure.
So that mindset is kind of what has allowed me to take those necessary risks. And also, I think that I can credit a lot of the continued risks that I continue to take to understanding that, like, this is not where I want to be. I'm in no way content or complacent on the current, level we're at. So we're constantly pivoting and looking for the next vehicle. Real estate, again, rarely grateful to have found real estate the time I found real estate, but that's pushed me into new vehicles that have, quadrupled, if not, 10x my net worth. So we're always looking for that next thing. But I also understand that real estate is kind of my first, so we stay involved in that. So as we pivot, real estate still has a large factor in our businesses today.
Do you consider yourself a real estate guy, quote unquote?
Yeah, that's tough, right? So like 2 years ago, yeah, I was a full real estate guy. That was everything. Right now, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and we're always looking for the next opportunity. We're currently opening up 2 restaurants in Charlotte, which is, I don't have any interest in restaurants, but the money makes sense, right? Real estate was my initial vehicle. And the beautiful thing about real estate is it's cyclical. So I can identify cyclical patterns, and right now it might be a really good time to be heavy down into it because there is blood in the water, but it also means you have to consider where your ROI is the highest. So I'll always be a real estate guy at heart, but I've kind of transformed in a way that, there are other businesses that generate revenue a little bit faster, but real estate's a really good place to capture wealth and hold wealth.
And I think we see that with a lot of guys in the investor space in general. A lot of investors that are in our space, they have real estate as kind of their foundation, their pillar, and then they kind of have these different opportunistic offshoots. I think what Dawson makes you kind of unique is you don't go at something half bore. You're turning the volume all the way up and running that opportunity down. The one thing that you said that I thought was really interesting, you're like, hey, it was lucky timing, but you're like, I also was in the room with the right people. So you don't need to name drop specific names, but like, who are like the 4 to 5 people from a position, influence, like what is their role in your life? And like, how does that contribute to your success, both in real estate and then, getting into these new ventures that you're getting into as well?
Right. Yeah. So there were 2 guys that were extremely influential to me the first 2 years in business. One great guy, but he's a slumlord. He owns like 400 units in the town I'm from. And I learned what passive income can do for you, and how not to be a slumlord, how to have better tenants and better properties. But I learned a lot of savvy business from him. He's a 70-year-old guy that probably makes a couple $100,000 a month on his rentals. So I learned a lot from him. And then my other guy is that owner-operator that's a one-man show up in Raleigh, Durham. I think his head's too big now. I don't really want to shout him out. Can't afford to get a larger head. But, he showed me what was possible when you systemize stuff. And that's a really, really beautiful thing about our current real estate operation is, we're doing more today than we were a year ago, but I'm completely phased out of it, right? I have a great project manager, a great foreman, a great COO that does all my sales guys and things like that. So, I couldn't tell you how much money I have loaned out. I couldn't tell you how many properties we're currently working on. The only way I know is if I look at my bank statement and see the checks being wrote out for rehabs and payoffs and things like that. So, those two guys were super influential. I learned what an operator that stays in the business forever looks like, and an operator that systemizes and can do a lot with one person. So I've taken those things and the things I've learned from wholesale and transitioned those lessons into new businesses, right? So two guys that are really, really influential, and then the next people are current business partners and ex-business partners, right? You can learn a lot from people you do business with and what that looks like, right? So for me, I don't really like business partners, and my current business partners know that. And if they listen to this, they know that I kind of run the show and they provide value where they can, and they have equity in a company we own together because of that. And then my ex-business partners showed me that, again, I like to be a solo guy and have really good guys up under me. So, I use the analogy like Batman and Robin. If everybody's looking to be Batman, then there's no Justice League, right? It's just a bunch of Batmans running around and probably not that good. But if you find a couple Robins that could be up under you and still make phenomenal money, they can kind of build a team, and you can systemize and be out of businesses and still make money in them.
So Dawson, I'm attracted to what you're saying about the systemizing things, right? Because I've got to imagine that's freed up a ton of your time, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has. I'm in no shape or form freed up because as soon as I get some systemized, it's on to the next thing, right? But it has allowed me to open and run new businesses while not having to shut the doors on a previous business.
So that's kind of where I was going with this, because I had assumed that that's kind of how you're freeing up time to identify these other business opportunities. Can you tell me about that, right? Like, what are these business opportunities? How are you identifying them? Like, what kind of research goes in there? Like, what is that additional free time that you're creating? What does it look like for you as far as putting those other businesses into place?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, 90% of our new businesses that we open up and start with failing a couple first ones. So for this year, I think I've tried 10 new businesses, right? Thrown 15, 20 grand at each of those businesses. And, I'm okay to lose 8 as long as 2 hit and they perform like my other companies, right? So for me, I've got a really good COO. He sits in the office with me. I don't have a private office. I've got 2,500 square foot here in Charlotte, and 2,000 square foot of that is filled with sales guys for my different companies. The other 500 square foot, I have a COO here, and we kind of have the same process to every single business we've started. We have a little bit of a educational phase. We see if it's something that makes sense, and for us, it has to make sense. Is the ceiling, can't be too low, right? Most wholesale operations make $400,000 a month at the complete height, right? The 2 top wholesalers, and I wouldn't even consider myself a top wholesaler anymore that I know of, can't crash past $400,000 of revenue a month. So for me, that's not that attractive. It doesn't really move the needle. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm not looking to start another business that only does $4 or $5 million a year, because then you've got a bunch of low 7-figure businesses and you can't move on to an 8 or 9-figure play. So we started things we thought were going to make sense, and they don't, but we have a couple that do, and then we kind of pour money into that. So my rule of thumb is I don't take money from a business for the first 2 years. So even if it's positive $2 million, we're going to dump that back in. Yeah, we may waste some money on marketing or just being a little bit too aggressive, but I don't pay myself. So my COO doesn't do the same. So we don't make any money for the first 2 years on companies we start. We pour it into employees and systems and processes and marketing. And then if it works after 2 years, we start making money. So we've been able to do that. We started a really, really cool managed service company that's in the e-commerce space. So we handle about 600 clients that do what's called Amazon FBA. And we handle all their fulfillment and product choice and things like that. We've got 50,000 square foot in Scottsdale, Arizona that we do that out of. And that was one of the ones that hit, right? But it took 8 or 9 really, really good ideas that I thought that didn't hit or didn't perform to the standards that we have, established within our companies, right? So it may make $5,000 a month, but it may take way too much time or manpower to make $5,000 a month, so we cut it loose. Or we had a company that was making $50,000 a month, but it was really hands-on, and for me to get out of it, it would cost another $10,000 a month. So it doesn't move the needle, so we move on.
Makes sense.
Can you give us some examples of some of the failed businesses. We'll talk about the good stuff, the successes, but I want to.
No, yeah, that's
go well.
Learn from failures. Yeah, we you know, in the last year we started a data subscription company, right, for wholesalers, and it did really, really well. But it also took a lot of time away from our employees to manage that data and things like that. I think at the height, we were doing about $100,000 a month in revenue at like a 40% margin. So 40 grand a month before I paid my employees and my sales guy and all that, it dwindled down to 25 grand a month between myself and my partner in that. And it was taking, you know, 5-10 hours a week out of our time, dealing with, you know, software issues, unhappy people, you know, they buy 500 numbers and they think they're supposed to have 500 wholesale deals out of it, right? So with that being said, we fulfilled our last couple orders and shut it down just because it was taking up way too much of our time. We started, what else is another one that, people always ask me to get into mentorship and stuff like that, and I almost did a Discord community and decided I didn't want to do that. Right. Again, it's a time versus money. I've got to be enslaved to people that paid me $100 a month to be a part of this Discord community where, you know, I can put together one deal and make that times 12. So, you know, those two have just been didn't make much sense as far as just income producing. I mean, we not really had a business that didn't make any money, but it's like, you know, I can focus on 3 businesses. That's about my bandwidth. And right now, those are not deals that move the needle for us. And I don't think that anybody can really focus on anything more than that, unless you're like a superhuman like Elon that has 40 businesses, but I'm not. So,
what are those 3, Dawson, right? So it's real estate, it's the e-commerce, and then what's the third thing that you're working on?
Yeah, so we're working on a new commodities business where we're doing some oil and gas stuff, which it's a whole rabbit hole I can go down, but that we just hired 26 guys on in the greater Charlotte area. So that's going to be our main focus for the next 6 months to a year, and then we'll get out of that. But really, right now it's e-commerce and real estate, and those take up more than 60 hours a week. So
yeah. When it comes to the business that have failed, so like you talked about a couple different metrics, but I'm curious if you have like a line that you draw in the sand where like, if it doesn't hit this, I'm out and I'm going to fail fast and then get it out of the way. Is it like $1 per hour? Is it a company, you know, total value by a certain date in the future? What do you look at there to be able to like fail fast and move on to your winners?
Yeah, so I look for 6 months to a year of me being in it full time. By full time, I mean 40 hours a week. Hopefully shorter than that, right, for a winner. But I'll do that work. The real estate's beautiful because I put maybe 5 hours a week in it, so I have plenty of time, and I work 7 days a week, except whenever my girlfriend yells at me. But, you know, like, it needs to be able to move the needle, and move the needle for me is I want to be completely out of it, meaning, like, I sit down with my current COO and if there are partners or equity holders or revenue share guys in my current businesses, we sit down once a month for a monthly meeting. That's a 2-hour meeting. I want to be able to know enough and not have to be involved past that and still net $100,000 a month. So if it can't do that in a year, I cut it.
Makes sense. The next question I'll ask is, someone doesn't get into all these different business ventures. You name dropped, or not name dropped, but position dropped a few different business partners that you have. You don't do that without being able to build networks and relationships very effectively. I think there's a ton of podcasts, there's a ton of literature, there's a ton of information in general on how to build relationships. There's no single correct way. What I'm curious is like, what works for you? Because you found yourself in all these different positions to earn money with high value partners. How do you do that, and what's the successes and the failures that you learned on that?
Yeah, so I am completely against partnerships on paper and in businesses. So for me, I'm just against that. I don't think that people get into partnerships because they need someone. They get into partnerships because they're scared to take a leap of faith on their own. 9 times out of 10, I do some high level consulting, like to 4 or 5 people a year, right? These people pay me north of 6 figures to do phone calls weekly, and that's the only type of mentorship I do. And out of those 5 or 6 people, 2 or 3 of them have brought on a partner when they initially started a business. They did it because they were scared. They wanted someone to fail with. It's never, you don't ever want someone to succeed with because you want all the money, but you want someone to be there if you fail, right? Yeah, if you fail, you want someone to be like, oh, we tried our best. 99%, but all 3 of those people regret their partnership. They downloaded some LLC formation BS online. They have a terrible operating agreement. They can't get out of it. And one of them does all the work. The other person takes half the money and is chilling, So I don't have partnerships. The businesses that I own with other people are on rev share agreements, and they have to hit certain metrics for me for them to still be a part of it. Do they have a percentage of net profit? Yes, but it's all rev share agreements. So I don't think you need it unless you can clearly identify what someone brings, right? So 9 times out of 10, it's a startup. You guys both have the same experience level. You're not bringing something to the table. It makes no sense, right? For us, like with our commodities company, there's someone that brings a heavily discount in the oil industry, right? We can get barrels of oil for pennies compared to what another company can. That's a value that I don't have. I don't have that connection. I don't have the ability. So they are on a rev share with me. And as long as they can continue to have industry-leading prices, they continue to make money off of what we're doing. That's the only way it makes sense for me. I think that, I started my wholesale company with a partner. He's a great guy, really good dude. But what I found was, when I wanted to not pay myself for the month and put more money into bandit signs or marketing or cold callers, he wanted to take a check. And we were able to dissolve that very early on. And now I look back and what I've built, I never would have been able to build what I've built without taking risk and, not having any money in my bank account some months because I put it all out into marketing. So with that partner, I would not have been able to do that. So yeah, I think that the partnerships are stupid unless there's inconceivable value with that other person that you can't go get on your own.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, some people at different phases of their journey, I think you're right, Dawson. Like they probably wouldn't take action if they didn't have that partner next to them, right? So for some people, it might be their only way to kind of wedge in or like their only way in that moment in their mindset of like, I need this other person to fail with. But your perspective is super interesting because it's like, I think a lot of the developers that we work with that are operating at a very high scale, they have a team, right? They have a team of employees. They don't have very many like dual partnerships and, multi-layered LLC agreements, things like that for probably the exact reason you mentioned. So I think that's super interesting. And then let's talk about like no rev share agreements, no business stakes. Like how are you building relationships with like on that flip and like other people that are in your neighborhood? Like how does that come about?
I mean, again, like, so we look at the value provided, right? So when I started, I needed a lender that was going to be able to fund quickly and give me the money that I wanted at the rates that I wanted. And that's exactly how we've done it. So I believe in doing business with people. I just don't necessarily think everybody has to have a stake in each other's companies, right? Like I'm sure I've done several $1 million with you guys in the last few months, and I don't ask for Fund That Flip to cut me a check out of that because I'm providing value to you and you're providing value to me. I mean, now if you guys want to sponsor a race car, we can talk about that. But
we'll talk to Kendall.
But like that's not how businesses are formed. So yeah, I don't try to do that. I don't really. I have tons of agreements with people that say, hey, like this is what I'm bringing to the table. Like, you bring this to the table and this is how we'll split any profit that comes in. But that doesn't mean that we need to set up another company. Everybody wants to go set up an LLC for fun.
This podcast is brought to you by your friends at Fund That Flip and produced by Conversa. Fund That Flip is here for real estate investors all over the U.S. We are the premier hard money lender connecting active investors to passive ones through crowd-funded loans in order to make real estate investing accessible to everyone. We believe providing transparency into our process as well as research and resources for investors at every stage, we can open up the world of REI to more people and help small businesses everywhere transform their communities and make an impact on their neighborhoods. Learn more at fundthatflip.com. Make sure to rate us and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and find us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube.